Betty Elaine Neer. There to the river. But these trees, when I came back home down here 20 years or 25 years ago, I could see half of the river. And those trees have grown up, so I can't see the river. They took that one little spot. And this tree is mine. I'm going to cut some of them limbs off because that's the only spot I can see the river through my window. They've got a fence, but I don't have a fence. So when I go over there to throw some stuff, I never throw anything over that won't deter, you know. But weeds and stuff, I don't go past that hose. I stay right there. But I do plant, I've got a road, I plant some stuff in here, some vegetables, and south and east and west, and that's about north over there. So I go up there, I've been working up there taking the weeds out, and I burn my trash that I can burn up there. And then these are two buildings that's got my lawnmowers and junk and stuff in. And I put these things up because the deer come down and they come in the yard and go through. So I put those up, and I haven't seen hardly any deer. I saw two, and they were standing right over there. I put a cover in there, but I don't know. It was full of water all winter. It's empty now. I just had the pool, and I've got those two pools over there, but I don't put any fish in them. I just have water in them, but that one's the plastic's got a leak evidently. I was born in a house that's not there anymore. It was on the bluff, and when they widened the highways, they made Mom and Dad build a house, which is the one that's down by the road now, because it was too close to the property is still there where the house was, but it's too close to the bluff. Yes, that was my maiden name, Neer. I had a couple other names, but when I was divorced or whatever, and I lived in Goble, Oregon for 45 years. And then when I retired from working in Montgomery Ward's in the mail order accounting office, I came back down here in 1995 and lived with Mom. I had 9 years with Mom before she died. And so Dad had died. Dad was born in 1899 and he died in 1974. So he was 74, 75. He was a logger. He started when his dad died when he was 14 years old. He was the youngest, no, he was the fifth child. There was 4 sisters, and then my dad, and then a brother, and then another sister. 7 children. And there was 18 cousins. I was the youngest of the 18 cousins. There's only 2 left. Sisters, the ones I don't know. She's always lived in south of, or she lives back east someplace. But her sister is in a care center in St. Helens, and I see her. So she and I are the only ones left of the 18 grandchildren. Yeah. This refrigerator, Mom got this refrigerator in about 1941, and I've only had some guy came and charged me $7 to fix whatever, and it's still running. Well, these roads, I was growing up before, they never had names on these roads. They just had a box number, mailbox number. But so when they named the roads, of course, Dad was born here in 1899, and so I don't know when it was they named the roads, but it's been a long time ago. So they named it after Dad, I guess, you know, the Neers. My dad's family, his dad came from Pennsylvania when he was 12 years old. He was born in 1840. Anyway, Dad lived here. He was born in 1899. He died in 1974. And he lived in this house over here all of his life. He was one of 7 kids. Well, my brother, when he started, he went up here to the Neer City Schoolhouse. He went there for a couple years. Well, then the neighbors down at the creek, Giles's, they had 2 boys, and the oldest one and I were the same age, and then Bobby, he was a year younger. So we walked to we quit going, my brother quit going to the Neer City School, and then we all went out to the Goble School out there. We went the 8 grades out there, and then high school we went, of course, to Rainier. Graduated from Rainier in 1947. Well,
alive now.
see, when I went to Goble School, they had a hall and 2 rooms that had first 4 grades and then the last 4 grades out there. And so you were in one room for 4 years and then in the other room for 4 years. Oh, we had several teachers. Gosh, I can't even remember. But we were in the first 4 grades, and you'd move up, and then the next year you'd move over into that other room and for 4 grades.
There.
Oh, baseball. They had it right there by the school. They had a baseball, and that's what the boys and a few of the girls, we played baseball. That was the main thing, baseball. And then when we'd get back in from the half hour or whatever we had for lunch, the teacher would read stories to us for half an hour so we could rest, I guess. Yeah.
Lunches when you were a kid.
We took our own lunch until about the last year, I think. Maybe they started with a kitchen. I don't know. But I went 8 years out there. We would walk to school, and if Bobby and Roger was my class, we'd get out there, and when we were walking home, the boys liked to throw rocks. One time the rock hit me in the back of the head, and I didn't think that was very funny. But I survived. Yeah, that was my grandma, I think, standing in the front corner, and she was holding one of her last children, I think. But that window in the top is the same window in all these pictures. Well, those ladies sitting on the ground, the one on the right-hand side is my grandma, and I don't know about the rest, but that picture up in that window in the top is the same, yeah. And that one is the same, and that's the way the house looked when I was born and lived in it. It had 2 bedrooms downstairs and 3 bedrooms upstairs. When you went in the front door, you were in the dining room, and then there was no bathroom at that point, but when you got to the left of the picture, the kitchen was in the back, and then they made that room into a bathroom. And I was about 10 years old when we got the bathroom.
How about that one?
And then after my grandma died and my brother was gone and I was gone, Mom and Dad took that part of the house off and moved the kitchen and the bathroom over to the back side where the 2 bedrooms were. And upstairs there were still 2 bedrooms. My grandma, that's my grandma sitting on the right, and my grandpa, her husband, sitting in the left. He's holding their youngest daughter, youngest child. Up at the top on the right is Aunt Mary. She was the oldest of 4 girls, and then the 4 girls are there, and then the 2 boys sitting down. There's a boy in the middle. He belongs to the couple up on the top corner, and the other 2 boys, the one on the left was my dad, and the one on the right was my uncle. And then there was 7 children there, so all 7 of them are in that picture. Me, that's Betty Elaine Neer. My brother was Willis Neer, Willis Dean. And it's kind of odd too. My mom was born in Portland, and they went to Lincoln High School, she and a girlfriend. The girlfriend had relatives in Goble. And so they came down to Goble to see this friend's relatives. And when they were here, Mom met Dad. Dad was born right here. And so Mom and Dad got going together and got married. That man is my dad, Michael Dean Neer. He was always known by Dean, but where he was a logger, they called him Blackie. And that's my mother. She was born in Northwest Portland, and she and her girlfriend came down to see the girlfriend's relatives, and she met Dad down here. Well, my dad, Michael Dean Neer, but he was known by Dean with the family, and the loggers always called him Blackie. This was a Blake boy. He lived in this area. And Clarence Chase, I knew him. and John Roberts was a good friend of my dad's. The rest of these people I didn't know. They were just all loggers. They logged. Dad started when he was 15 years old. His dad had died, and so he started logging, and they started here in Goble. And he walked to work until he earned enough money to be able to buy a car, because they kept going. And he worked for Clark and Wilson for 30 years, and they ended up out at Vernonia. And so then he was out of a job. Dad would trade in Deer Island. He'd go, because he drove out and picked up other guys that rode out towards Vernonia where he logged. But I lived with Grandma. Grandma's one in this old house, and Mom and Dad, and my brother was 2 years older. Dad would shop at Deer Island on his way home from logging, and so we'd go to St. Helens to shop, I guess, too, you know. Up here in the Neer City Cemetery. My grandfather, I never knew my grandfather because he died before I was ever born. But yeah, all the Neers up to this point, I have a spot up there, and I think that's the end of it. And because my grandfather's the one started that cemetery, and it's only was that lower half. Well, then when Mom and Dad got tired of taking care of it, they gave it to the Neer City Cemetery District. So they owned it, and then they built the other half of it up there. The Goble store was right on the corner when you turned up that road. You know that?
Yeah, on Nikolai.
Yeah, and the store was right there, and it was a good store. You could go in there, and it had get halfway in the building, and the main counter was on the left-hand side, and there was a big furnace in the middle of the room, and it had chairs you could sit around there, and they had to go down. They had to go down in the basement to keep putting wood in that thing, you know. And then they lived upstairs in that building. It was a nice apartment up there. Yes, there was a post office in that building. Yeah, the Goble, and the address was the Goble store. Yeah. Okay, when you turned up that road, and you got right up almost to the top, it was a hall, and it was big steps going up, and there was a building right up there before you even got to the first house. So that was what they called the Redmond Hall. Yeah. Well, they had dances, I know, but it was a big hall, and it had a couple of posts in it, so the dancers had to watch out that they didn't run into the posts. I was too young for that stuff, but yeah, my dad was, he had 4 sisters, and then him, and then a brother, and then another sister. Well, when you turned up off the highway and went up there, you were kind of looking at the Redmond Hall, and the jail was right across on the left-hand side. It was just a square building, probably about 12 feet square, and it had open windows with bars on them. That's about all I know. I never was in it.
Do you know anybody that was ever?
Goble was a pretty good business when Dad was born. It had several stores and across the railroad track and all that. And the only thing left now is the tavern, the Goble Tavern. But, well, no, you went up that same road, and that dance hall was there, and it was right across the road from the dance hall. Okay. Right in, it's just up above the store there. Okay. Yeah. And my aunt and uncle lived in the second house, Dad's sister. When you come up from the store down there in Goble, and you kind of made a curve, it's not like that now, it kind of goes straight across. There was a house there painted red, and my aunt and uncle lived in that house. So sometimes my mom, that was my dad's sister and husband, lived there. And so once in a while, Mom and Dad would have me stop there and stay there for a while before coming home from school or something like that, I don't know. But they're all gone now. Yes, there was a Goble ferry, and it was still going when I came down here, went over to Kalama, yeah. But I guess, well, that bridge in Longview was built in 1929, I think the same year I was born. And so, yeah, but you could take a ferry right here from Goble and go across to Kalama. Yeah. Well, it was out, it was, they widened the highway and they kept blasting. Our house was right close to there, and they kept blasting, and finally they made Mom and Dad move down that other house because the bluff, the piece of ground is probably still there where I was growing up, that house, but it was too close, so Mom and Dad had to move down, and they built that house. $9,000 they gave them for this house that they tore down, and whatever. So, well, when I was born and living here, when you went down this road, you turned to the left, and you went probably 40 feet, and then there was two ways. You could turn to the right and go to St. Helens, or turn to the left and go to Rainier. Well, now it's not like that. You just go down and get on the road first. But yeah, it was that way. And one time I had a school book, and I must have been in about the 5th grade. I had a big flat school book that I had under my arm, and my brother had already left and gone to school on his bicycle, and I was behind him. And I got halfway down there where the thing split and went to St. Helens or Rainier, and I hit a bump, and my bicycle fell down, my book flew over the fence, but I finally got up and got my book back and got out to school. Oh yeah, we did usually, unless it was pouring down rain, but there was no school buses then. We'd have to walk, So, but it was a 2-room school with the first 4 grades and then the other room with the other 4 grades. Not like that now at all. Well, one we called Poot. He went to Prescott grade school, and I went to Goble. But when we got to high school, the bus would stop and pick him up. But when he got old enough, he had his own car, and then he would drive to school like a lot of kids did. So, but we rode the school bus down here. We catch it on the road to go to high school in Rainier there for 4 years. And I never even knew, I don't think, that his name was Lee Welter. We always called him Poot. It was his youngest son that was one we called Poot. Yeah, but there's no house down there anymore where they lived. Yeah, lived right by the railroad track. There was a house right over here. There was a couple, an old couple, Grandma and Grandpa Melville, that lived in it. But they didn't, I don't know, they just lived there. I don't know where their kids were or anything. But then you go on down that driveway, and there was a family called Giles lived down there. And they had 2 boys. The boy that was in the same class through all 8 grades of high school and everything was one of them. And Bobby, he was a year younger. And so when I got out of school and everything, and I lived in Tigard for 45 years, I didn't get to see these 2 boys that we played with all the time. And Bobby just died here last year. He was a year younger than me. He lived in California, so I hadn't seen him for years. And then Roger, the older brother that was in my class, he lives in Portland, but I don't hardly see him either. Because in the summertime, their 2 boys and my brother and I, we swam in that. They have in the creek, Goble Creek, it has a big pool there. And we could swim in that. We did that all the summers. But then walking back home, and it was hotter than heck. And you were so hot when you got home getting up here. Giles lived right by the creek down there. Gosh. Well, my girlfriend, but she lived out way on the other side of Goble School. Her name was Pluff. She had a sister 2 years older, and then another sister 9 years younger. And when that baby was on the way, all the men around were hoping that Mr. Pluff would get a boy. He got a 3rd girl. Well, when my girlfriend Dolores Pluff and I were in high school, we got jobs up at Montgomery Ward's, when we had 1 more year of high school to go to, but we worked up there in the mail order counting office at Summit. And so the next year, when we graduated from Rainier High School, my friend Dolores, she went up right away the next Monday. I said, well, I'm going to have a week's vacation before I start working. So I waited a week, and then I went up to Montgomery Ward's and got a job in the mail order counting office. We were on the same floor, the third floor of Montgomery Ward's, and she worked a year and got married and quit working. I worked 2 years, got married, and then I worked 3 more years. I worked 5 years there at the Montgomery Ward mail order office. So, and then I quit. 5 years was enough. Oh, that office I worked in, it was on the third floor. I don't know if you ever knew about what was inside of Montgomery Ward's when it was a store. But you know, when you go past that building where it was, there's a driveway that goes up in the back, and you can drive around and let people out and stuff. Okay. Dolores and I was up there working, and she was, let's see, where was I going to go with this? Oh, when I got out of high school and we went back up and got jobs again in that accounting office, Fern was the office manager of the part that I was in. And she would sit back there and in another desk, and then I was up here. And it was that third floor, the one half of it had furniture on it, and the other half was our offices. And so one day, Fern, my boss that sat 2 seats back, she was talking to a man standing in front of my desk. And anyway, she didn't care about what kind of words she used. And she was standing there, these 2 office guys, a man and her, was standing in front of my desk, so I kept busy working away. And she was using these kind of words, and pretty soon she looked at me and she says to this man, she says, I better quit talking like that. Betty's hearing what I'm saying. Oh dear. But she wasn't married. She was in her about 45 or something like that then. Oh gosh. Yeah. But I had the 2 girls and a boy. The boy was younger. Darren, he and his wife live in Tigard. That's my youngest daughter. Her name's Lori, and she and her husband live in Tigard. It's my oldest daughter, Connie, and let me think. Oh, she's the one that lives in Tigard, and the other one lives out at Estacada. I've got good health. I don't take any medications of alcohol or anything, and I'm happy here. My car's still running.
All right, good.
Actually, it was in the doctor's office the other day, the car was. So, but I'm glad to be back down here. I like Goble.